Okay, so today in 8.5a, we're still going to be looking at rational expressions like we did in 9.4. Today we'll specifically be adding and subtracting. In 9.4, we were multiplying and dividing and simplifying, which is kind of like reducing a fraction. Now, I just want to remind you on this first one, little details from fractions with addition subtraction from when you were a kid. And then we'll start to get into some having variables, starting with kind of smallish ones and getting a little bit bigger. Okay, so just as a reminder, adding and subtracting is when you need a common denominator. With my two little fractions here, my common denominator would be 12. So I'm going to go ahead and write in the 12. To get the 12 with the 1/4, I would need to multiply the 4 by 3, so I'll balance that in the top. Now you'll see if I were to reduce 3 over 12, I get the 1/4 back, and I need to multiply the 3 times the 4, balance up here. So 2 times 4 is 8. Now same thing, if I were to reduce this, I'd get 2/3. Once I get that there, I just need to add the top, keep that common denominator. All right, so little tiny fraction review from back when you were a kid. Now let's start to look at variables in the mix because that's really what we're going to look at. So I want us to start kind of smallish, make sure we get our idea, and then we're going to get a little bit bigger here in a second. Okay, so what I want to do is come up with my common denominator, which basically means I need everything from my denominators represented. So in terms of numbers, I need to have a 3. And in terms of variables, I need to have an x. Okay, so on the first one, I've already got the x, but I don't have the 3, so I'm going to multiply by 3. So on the top, I'll have 3. Here, I already have my common denominator, so I'm just going to bring the 2 over. So then I'll add the top, keep the common denominator just like I did over there. So I'll have 5 over 3x. Now, one thing you are going to want to do on these is similar to what we did in 9.4 is you're going to want to make sure you state restrictions. You don't really have restrictions if you just have numbers, but here, if my x was 0, 0 times 3 is 0. You're not really supposed to have a 0 in the denominator. So I'm going to restrict 0. X can't equal that. Okay, looking at the last one on this slide, I need to make sure each of my variables is represented in my common denominator. So I'm going to make my common denominator x, y. Now on my first fraction, I've got the x, I need the y, so I'll multiply by y here. So 2y. And here I need the x, so I'll multiply by the x, so 3x. So I'll end up with 2y plus 3x over xy. Now that's great, that's my answer. My restrictions are x cannot equal 0, because if x is 0, it would make the whole denominator 0, because 0 times anything is 0. And y cannot equal 0 for the same reason. If y is 0, 0 times anything is 0, it'll make the whole thing be undefined. Okay, now what I want us to do is just go through and look at 3 problems that are really like the ones you're going to mainly see on your homework. I think I gave y'all a couple that were kind of smallish, like the ones that we just did, but you're going to see some of these bigger ones too. Now, what I'm going to go through and do is start by factoring my denominator. So here I'll have x plus 4, x plus 1, same as 9.4. I'm going to assume you know where my factoring comes from. So if you have factoring questions, come in and see me. I'm going to pull out a 3 here, so I'll have x plus 1. Now, what I want to do in terms of my common denominator is I want to make sure that every factor is represented. Now, I don't necessarily have to repeat them, but I need every factor to be represented. So going through here, I need the 3. I need the x plus 1. Okay, coming back over here, and I did the second one first just because it had the 3 in it. I already have the x plus 1, but I need the x plus 4. Now that's how I'm going to get my common denominator. And I'm going to go ahead and write it in a second time here for my second fraction. Okay, so what I need to do is manipulate this first fraction to get a common denominator. So I've got the x plus 4 and x plus 1. I need the 3. So I'll get the 3 in the top here. And in my second fraction, I've got the 3 and the x plus 1. I need the x plus 4. So I'll multiply by that and distribute out my 5x. So I have 5x squared plus 20x. Now once I have a common denominator, I'm going to add the top. So 5x squared plus 20x plus 3. I can't combine like terms there. I might try to factor in a second, but I'm not sure it's going to factor either, over my common denominator. Now I want y'all to notice we followed the same steps we did when we had little fractions over here. We just had more work to do because it's bigger. So this is good. This is my answer. I don't think I can factor the top. Let me just check up here, because if I put the 3 there, I get 15. I can't get to 20. It's too big. So I'm not going to be able to factor it. If I could, I might be able to reduce. The last thing I need to do is get restrictions. So I'm going to look at my denominator. There's no variable with the 3, so it's going to be fine. Here, when I set it equal to 0 and solve, I'll get -1. The x plus 4, set it equal to 0 and solve, I'll get -4. Okay, so let's look at one more before we get a little bit bigger, and I want to make sure we look at a subtraction one. So I'm going to start out the same way. I'm going to factor my denominators so that I can decide on a common denominator. So I have -6 plus 2. Yeah, that works. And on the bottom, I can pull out a 4. Okay, so I'm going to decide on my common denominator. I need the 4, I need the x minus 6, and I need the x plus 2, which I have in both of them. Okay, let me go ahead and write this second time for my second fraction. All right, so my first fraction, I've got the x minus 6, the x plus 2. I do not have the 4, so let me get that in the mix. So 4 times 1 is 4. The second one, I have the 4 and the x plus 2. I don't have the x minus 6. And then I'll distribute out that. So I'll have 3x squared minus 18x. And then let me go through, combine like terms, keep the common denominator. Now I just like to, when I'm trying to combine like terms, I just like to write it in descending order. So that's why I put the 3x squared first. Now, same as a second ago, I don't think that top's going to factor, but I'm going to try it just to make sure. Let's see. No, because if I put a 4 there, that would be 12. I have no way to get big enough up to the 18. Okay, so let me delete that out. And this is as good as it gets. I forgot restrictions, so let's do that. Okay, 4, no solutions out. +6, -2. All right, and last one we're going to do today, which you'll notice is subtraction. And I just want to go through and start the same way. I'm going to go through and I'm going to start by factoring. So I'm going to pull out a 3 here. Now I'm going to just write it underneath because I think I'm going to be able to factor twice. And I think I can pull out a 3 here. Same thing, I'm just going to write it underneath because I think I'm going to be able to factor it again. Okay, and then let's factor it a second time and we'll write what we end up with over here. So when I factor this, I'll have -2 minus 1. Now remember, if you've got questions on factoring, make sure to come in and see me. Okay, and the second one, I'll write tiny. When I factor that, I'll have +2 minus 1. So when I come up with my common denominator, here's what I need to have. I need to have the 3, the x minus 2, the x minus 1. Okay, over here I have the 3. Now I've got an x minus 2, but I don't have an x plus 2. So I have to get an x plus 2 in the mix. So I'm going to add that. And then I have the x minus 1. Okay, that's fine already. Okay, now let me write it a second time. Okay, so first fraction here, I don't have the plus 2. So I'm going to multiply this by x plus 2. And I'll distribute out that x. So I'll have x squared plus 2x. Okay, on my second one, and I'm running out of space, so I'm going to put this in red. I think you'll be able to see it. I've got everything except the x minus 2. I've got the x plus 2. And I'm going to have to FOIL these two together. So I'm going to have first, and let me put this right here so I can then combine like terms. So first, outside, inside, last, and then I'll combine like terms. So I just wrote it above there so I'd have a space to combine like terms. And then that was a minus 2 that I wrote on top of. Okay, so I've done a lot here. I just have a little bit more to do. I'm ready to subtract. Now what I like to do is go ahead and distribute out that negative because it belongs to everything in that second fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of it by distributing out the negative. That way when I go to combine my like terms, it'll be a little bit easier. Okay, so I have 1x squared and a negative 2x squared is a negative 1x squared plus 5x plus 2 over that whole long common denominator. All right, now this right here, I don't think I can factor, but I do always want to check. I know I could pull out a negative, but I have no way to get the 5. The 5's too big for the 2. So if I can't simplify it, if I can't reduce it, I'm fine to just leave it as is. Now I do need to state my restrictions. So the 3 is not a problem. X minus 2, if I set it equal to 0 and solve, I get 2, 1, and negative 2. All right, typically people feel like this section is pretty tough because it's long. You've got a lot of stuff to do, and I know a lot of y'all don't really enjoy fractions, and so this is tough because you've got to think about fractions with variables in the mix, which makes them even tougher. So watch this multiple times if you need to, but make sure you've got kind of this concept down. If you don't, come in and see me. All right, so this is 9.5a.